Chapter 26-27. Miao Yixiong. He dared to make a move on Zhou Xian. Even if he died 1,000 times, 10,000 times, it would not be enough to repay for what he had done to Zhou Xian. She wanted Miao Yixiong to suffer and die in pain. Yiqing Luo's rationality was gradually swallowed up. The profound jade heart in her chest also gradually became scorching hot. Her eyes at this moment were filled with a blood-like coquettish and gloomy coldness. The current Yiqing Luo was like an azure from hell. Her entire person was filled with a bloodthirsty, sadistic, cold intent. Ah! Want my life? Ha! Without the overlord you still want my life? Miao Yixiong laughed sinisterly. He stood up shakily. On his chest, there was still blood gushing out from the hole that his 5 fingers had pierced. The thick liquid soaked his clothes. He didn't seem to notice it at all. His ruthless eyes, crazily and proudly looked at Yiqing Luo. Towards Yiqing Luo's murderous intent he had no fear at all. What did you do to Zhou Xian? Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes, coquettish and cold, like a sharp blade, ruthlessly cutting Miao Yixiong's skin. Haha. I didn't intend to do anything to him, but a freak combination of factors let my plan succeed. Miao Yixiong laughed even more crazily. From now onwards, he Zhou Xian is my Miao Gu family's dog. Oh. Behind her, Chi-Chi's tiger roar suddenly came out. This roar also called back a trace of Yiqing Luo's rationality. Yiqing Luo turned her head. She saw the man who forcefully used his profound energy to break through the gu worm entering his body fell straight down. Zhou Xian. Yiqing Luo's blood-red eyes flashed. The murderous intent gradually dissipated. The surging emotions in her chest were also suppressed. She flew swiftly towards Zhou Xian, trying to catch his fallen body. Oh. Chi-Chi was already lying under Zhou Xian. The soft fur firmly caught Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian. Yiqing Luo half squatted beside Zhou Xian, raised her hand and touched his face. It was cold to the touch. Beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Ah! Miao Yixiong's wild laughter was extremely loud. He laughed heartily, as though the humiliation which they had suffered from Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian for the past few days had been returned to them by several folds. Looking at the unconscious Zhou Xian. Then he looked at Yi Luo, whose face was full of heartache and whose eyes were still dripping with tears. He felt more and more satisfied. Yi Luo, don't worry and die. Our Miao Gu deathly silence will definitely take good care of this dog. His words fell. Miao Yixiong's ferocious and violent attack had already overtaken Yiqing Luo's direction. This tyrannical power. It was absolutely not the same strength he had when he was facing Zhou Xian. Yiqing Luo's keen senses told her that something was amiss. She lowered her voice and reminded Chi-Chi, take good care of Zhou Xian. Don't let anyone near him. Soon after, with a flick of his fingers, the devouring flame fan in his hand abruptly stirred up a whirlwind, bringing with it a ferocious and chilling killing intent as it met Miao Yixiong's attack. Seeing Yiqing Luo's counterattack, Miao Yixiong's twisted face curled into a treacherous and complacent sneer, as though he was ridiculing Yiqing Luo for taking the bait. Chapter 26-28. Just as Miao Yixiong finished his words, a strong gust of wind swept through the entire bedroom. Miao Yixiong opened his palm towards Miao Rongrong's direction. That hurricane lifted Miao Rongrong's body into Miao Yixiong's palm. Miao Yixiong casually threw Miao Rongrong to Zhou Xian's side. With this fall, Miao Rongrong felt as if her internal organs were about to be shattered. She endured the pain. She had no time to care about the bleeding wound on her body. Bit by bit she moved towards Zhou Xian. Get lost. Miao Rongrong, if you dare to get close to my man, I will make you beg for death. Yiqing Luo's eyes were bloodshot as she stared straight at Miao Rongrong. The extreme chill was bone-chilling. It made Miao Rongrong freeze on the spot. Ah woo! Taking advantage of Miao Rongrong's momentary daze, Chi-Chi opened its mouth and bit Miao Rongrong's arm with its sharp teeth. Miao Rongrong screamed. Fresh blood flowed out from Chi-Chi's mouth. She could vaguely hear the sound of bones breaking. Yi Luo, soon. Your overlord will open his eyes, but by then what awaits you will be. Yiqing Luo was about to rush to Zhou Xian's side to stop Miao Rongrong from getting close. Miao Yixiong pestered Yiqing Luo again. He laughed sinisterly as if he had already imagined what would happen when Dmo Xian opened his eyes. His face was filled with a complacent smile. What did Miao Yixiong's words mean? What kind of poison did he cast on Dmo Xian? Yiqing Luo's heart was getting more and more flustered. Towards Miao Yixiong, who was pestering her, her attacks became more and more severe. But he didn't know why. This Miao Yixiong, who was obviously not that powerful and was afraid of death. His strength had improved by leaps and bounds. She couldn't break free from Miao Yixiong's pestering. On the other side, even though Miao Rongrong's arm was bitten by Qi, she still stubbornly climbed to Dmo Xian's side. That face, which was distorted due to pain, was filled with a crazy smile. She stared at Dmo Xian's face in a daze. Her blood-stained hands wanted to caress his face. But when he saw the blood on his fingertips, she paused. Then he laughed foolishly. Lord Overlord is so noble and elegant. I'm very dirty now, so I can't dirty you. Later. I'll let you hug me and you'll have to hug me. My Lord Overlord. Roar. Hearing Miao Rongrong's words, Qi's eyes were filled with anger. The Overlord belongs to Master. The Overlord can only belong to the Master. His roar. Qi did not control her strength well. With a crack, Miao Rongrong's right arm was bitten off. Blood spurted out. Miao Rongrong did not respond. Her eyes stared unblinkingly at Dmo Xian. It was obvious that he had become an idiot. This scene fell into Yiqing Luo's eyes. She evaded Miao Yixiong's attacks while keeping an eye on Dmo Xian's situation. When he saw Miao Rongrong's abnormal reaction, he felt a chill run down his spine. Her heart skipped a beat. An extremely ominous premonition began to spread in his heart. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Miao Rongrong's performance was even scarier than that idiot. Her own arm was bitten off, but she didn't feel any pain at all. And Miao Yixiong, what on earth was going on to be able to use his profound grade to fight her to a draw in just a few days? It was not a draw. Miao Yixiong did not use his full strength. He was just trying to delay time. Chapter 26-29. Girl, don't let Miao Rongrong get close to Sovereign. Yiqing Luo felt a burning sensation on her wrist and heard Old Man Song's urgent voice in her mind. You must go to the Overlord's side immediately. Otherwise, even a venerable sovereign would not be able to resist the corrosion of the goo poison. Yiqing Luo heard the urgency in Old Man Song's tone. What kind of venom did they use on Xian? That's love goo. Old Man Song quickly explained. The host implanted with the love goo will faint for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. During this time, the love goo will completely invade the host's consciousness. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the first person that the host sees when he opens his eyes will be the person that he is attached to and devoted all of his affection to. Old Man Song's words made Yiqing Luo's heart violently tremble. It was as if something had pierced her heart. Miao Yixiong wants to use the love goo to control Dizun and make him fall in love with Miao Rongrong. Old Man Song's tone became more and more urgent. Girl, you can't let Dizun become attached to Miao Rongrong. Otherwise, with Dizun's strength and character, he would rather die than listen to the Miao tribe's orders. Yiqing Luo's fingers curled up as she looked at Dmo Xian. Her heart convulsed and it was hard for her to breathe. This was, with Xian's temperament. He was controlled by a goo worm. He would rather perish indiscriminately. Furthermore, it was the Miaogoo clan that wanted to control him. In other words, it was necessary to control him to hurt her and the people around her. How could Xian bear to do that? She did not know how powerful the goo poison was. However, he also believed that it wasn't a coincidence that the Miao tribe had survived for nearly 1,000 years. She could not let Xian become a puppet of the Miaogoo family. You're so worried about a man that you don't even care about your own life? Miao Yixiong's cold laughter rang in her ears. Yiqing Luo was in a daze. This gave Miao Yixiong an opportunity to strike his palm on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. Yiqing Luo took a few steps back. The sharp pain in her shoulder made her face slightly pale. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she placed one hand on the shoulder that was hit. From the corner of her eyes, she glanced at Dmo Xian's direction. His heart burned with anxiety. From the time Dmo Xian was implanted with the venom, it had already been at least half an incense's time. Miao Yixiong would never give her a chance to get close to Dmo Xian. What should she do? Miao Rongrong, that lunatic, in order to gain Dmo Xian's attention, she didn't even care about her own life. If this went on, sooner or later it would be too late for Dmo Xian to open his eyes. Old Man Song's voice sounded again. Following Old Man Song's surprised tone, Yiqing Luo felt the scorching heat on her arm and quickly shifted to her shoulder. Old Man Song continued, No, little girl, Miao Yixiong's power is completely different from before. Yiqing Luo's expression was grave as she nodded lightly. I know. She had fought with Miao Yixiong before. How could he not know Miao Yixiong's strength? The palm landed on her shoulder. She was even more certain of her guess. This Miao Yixiong. Otherwise he would find their Miao Gu tribe's forbidden Gu worms and raise his strength for a short period of time. That was the mysterious person who had come into contact with Miao Rongrong, the one who had surpassed the Nirvana realm, had helped him. She still remembered the time when Miao Rongrong was imprisoned in the Battle King's residence by Yuan Zhan. Miao Rongrong had met that mysterious person. At that time, even Jun Qingwu had some fear towards that person's strength. If it was because of that mysterious person. Chapter 2630. No, what I mean is. Old Man Song lowered his voice. This palm wind of his carries a very familiar power. Familiar? Yiqing Luo's expression froze. Immediately she flew up and swiftly avoided Miao Yixiong's next attack. Yes. Although the feeling is very weak, but I can confirm that this palm wind is mixed with the aura of the dark forces. Old Man Song's voice was obviously solemn. Dark forces? These 4 words made Yiqing Luo's eyes widen suddenly. Her gaze towards Miao Yixiong was also filled with astonishment. Hadn't the dark forces been taken away by the upper realm's peace messenger? How could there still be the aura of the dark forces left in Nirvana realm? Yiqing Luo frowned. This matter was getting more and more complicated. Forget it. Now was not the time to consider this. She had to snatch her man back first. After that she would slowly investigate the reason why Miao Yixiong became stronger. Yiqing Luo pulled herself together and quickly retreated while shouting Chi-Chi's name. Chi-Chi bit off Miao Rongrong's arm as a sacred beast which had not killed for thousands of years. It felt that it was too bloody. Moreover, Miao Rongrong's flesh was too smelly. It was filled with the stench of Gu worms. It really couldn't take a second bite. It heard Yiqing Luo's cry. It almost slithered out from Dmo Xian's body and dashed towards Yiqing Luo. Trap Miao Yixiong, I'll go to Xian first. Yiqing Luo quickly retreated behind Chi-Chi. Awu. Chi-Chi indicated that this was absolutely no problem. Chi-Chi let out a long howl and suddenly pounced towards Miao Yixiong. Luo. Miao Yixiong was gloating because he hit Yiqing Luo. But he saw Yiqing Luo suddenly change to a snow-white tiger. She wanted this tiger to entangle him? An ordinary magical beast dared to try and stop him? Overestimating herself. Miao Yixiong sneered, totally not putting Chi-Chi in his eyes. Profound energy gathered in his palms and directly hit Chi-Chi's tiger head. He was completely confident that this palm strike would definitely be able to smash the white tiger into meat paste. Bam bam bam. As the wind from the palms slammed down, the sound of the force stirring up everything in the surroundings was heard. A strong hurricane swept through the bedroom. A huge pit appeared on the ground. Rubble flew everywhere and the room began to shake. Miao Yixiong retracted his palms and quickly scanned his surroundings. That palm of his just now, he missed the white tiger. Roar. A majestic tiger roar came from behind. Miao Yixiong turned around. A claw directly scratched his face. Chi-Chi's sharp claws scratched the skin on Miao Yixiong's face, leaving bloody scratches. Miao Yixiong's face was a bloody mess. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she gave Chi-Chi a thumbs up. She then turned around and dashed towards Dmo Xian's direction. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. The overlord is mine. Miao Rongrong sensed Yiqing Luo's approach and she abruptly raised her head as her pair of sinister eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. That crazy and malevolent face, sinister, was extremely terrifying. Yiqing Luo met with Miao Rongrong's eyes which were filled with madness and infatuation. She knew that this Miao Rongrong's mental state was not normal. Calculating the time in her heart, one joss stick's time was almost up. Yiqing Luo couldn't be bothered with Miao Rongrong. She directly lifted her leg and kicked Miao Rongrong to the corner. She immediately squatted down and was about to get close to Zhou Xian. Chapter 26:31. As soon as Miao Yixiong finished speaking, Yiqing Luo was keenly aware of the changes in the airflow. With her feet as the center, a horrifying airflow surrounded her body and attacked her. The air current that carried a murderous aura. This caused Yiqing Luo to stop in her tracks. Not good. Old song floated around inside the azure dew bracelet. Girl Luo, Miao Yixiong wants to use a Gu formation to trap you. Gu formation? What the hell was that? Just the name alone was enough to tell that it wasn't anything good. A Gu formation is a formation that uses tens of thousands of Gu worms. It's a long-lost forbidden Gu technique. Old man Song's voice trembled. How could Miao Yixiong use such a formation? Isn't he afraid of incurring the punishment of the heavenly Tao? This was a long-lost forbidden Gu technique. Once it was used, the commotion it caused might attract the attention of the peace messenger. This was a forbidden Gu technique that destroyed the balance of the Nirvana realm. If Miao Yixiong was taken away by the peace messenger, wouldn't the position of patriarch of the Miaogu aristocratic clan that he insisted on being, be for naught? To trap her. In order to control Zhou Xian, Miao Yixiong was even willing to take such a risk, not allowing Yiqing Luo to think too much. The powerful streams of air around her feet gradually surrounded her. Then, countless poisonous insects of different shapes and sizes appeared in front of her. They followed the lingering airflow and wriggled towards her bit by bit. This array was extremely narrow. Yiqing Luo immediately turned around. It was very possible. Touching the lingering airflow, touching the disgusting liquid that kept dripping down, the viscous green liquid was dripping. In this quiet bedroom it was extremely strange. Last, don't move. These Gu worms have different uses. If they crawl into your body, you will be devoured by these Gu worms. Starting from your internal organs, you will become their puppet. Old man Song's voice was slightly tense. He had never expected that he would actually encounter such a sinister formation in the Nirvana realm. Yiqing Luo absolutely could not move. Before a Gu worm comes into contact with a person's skin, its speed is very slow. They would follow the scent and slowly crawl to the human body. The minute Yiqing Luo was swallowed by these Gu worms. So many Gu worms. They would absolutely treat Yiqing Luo as food, completely swallowing her up. How do we break the formation? The fastest way. Yiqing Luo stood stiffly on the spot, her face filled with anxiety. Her eyes stared intently at Zhou Xian. The time it took for an incense stick to burn was almost up. No matter what, she had to leave this Gu formation. From the corner of her eyes she saw Miao Rongrong, who had been kicked to the corner by her, dragging her entire body covered in blood, leaning on one hand as she continuously crawled towards Zhou Xian. From this angle, Yiqing Luo could clearly see there was a black thread floating in Miao Rongrong's eyes. That thin thread seemed to be a tool to control her. I don't know much about Gu. Old man Song's heart was also burning with anxiety. He couldn't wait to rush out of the azure dew bracelet and suffer for Yiqing Luo. Unless the peace messenger rushes over. At this critical juncture, Yiqing Luo, who was trapped by the Gu worm. Not only did she have to watch Zhou Xian open his eyes and see Miao Rongrong, she also had to be devoured by the Gu worm in front of Zhou Xian. Miao Yixiong was simply too sinister, too vicious. Even if the peace messenger rushed over, Zhou Xian had already opened his eyes and the first person he saw would still be Miao Rongrong. Chapter 26:32. Time was running out. Looking at Miao Rongrong and Zhou Xian, they were still a few steps away. Even if Miao Rongrong crawled closer to Zhou Xian. And the moment Zhou Xian opened his eyes, he crawled to Zhou Xian's side. No. She absolutely would not allow Zhou Xian to develop any attachment towards other women. Even if it was because of the Gu poison. She absolutely could not tolerate it. Her man. No matter when, it could only belong to her alone. Last, don't be rash. Old man Song realized what Yiqing Luo wanted to do and immediately called out to stop her. Yiqing Luo stared fixedly at the unconscious man lying on the ground. His gaze was so gentle that it seemed to carry the entire world. Her pink lips moved slightly and she said word by word, "If I have to be separated from Xian and see him no longer love me, I'd rather die with him. What future? What search for his origins? Find out the secret of the azure dew bracelet? What? Wait a minute." When Xian no longer loved her, lost his consciousness and became a puppet. None of them counted for anything. Before she fell in love with Xian, she was indeed indifferent to love. But now, she had fallen in love with Xian. She wanted to stay by Xian's side forever. She had already determined that Xian was her man. If Xian forgot her because of the love worm and no longer loved her, she believed that if Xian was conscious, he would also make the same decision as her. She had said it from the beginning. Her love could not tolerate even a grain of sand. She loves Xian. They loved each other so much that they would rather die together than be so close to each other but unable to touch each other. You could call her selfish or heartless. At this moment, her eyes and heart were filled with Xian alone. The corners of her mouth curled up into a chilly smile. It was as if a beautiful poppy had bloomed on her face. She exuded a suffocating yet irresistible charm. She raised her hand and pressed it against her chest. A sparkling and translucent pearl appeared in her palm. Calming pearl? Lass, you really want to do this? Old man Song really couldn't understand what Yiqing Luo was thinking about right now. Even though Venerable Sovereign had been poisoned by the love goo. But that didn't mean that it couldn't be solved. At least he was still alive, wasn't he? Why must she sacrifice her own life to become the first person that Xian saw? He even took out the tranquility bead. Yiqing Luo obviously wanted to borrow the power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade to forcefully break the formation. Yiqing Luo herself was very clear about it. Her body had long since lost control of her Profound Heart Jade several times. It could no longer withstand the protective power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. Forcefully expending the power of the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. There was an 80% chance Yiqing Luo would be completely swallowed by the Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade. However, no matter how Old Man Tsang persuaded Yiqing Luo, but he could only watch as Yiqing Luo's profound energy kept on rising. The Divine Phoenix Profound Heart Jade that had lost the suppression of the heart-settling pearl, when Yiqing Luo forcibly mobilized the power of the Profound Heart Jade. Bit by bit, something strange was happening. Yi Luo, what are you trying to do? Are you crazy? Miao Yixiong, who was being bitten by Qi, had also sensed Yiqing Luo's movement. He looked in disbelief at the increasingly thick profound energy in the goo formation. Yi Luo, that slut. Was she trying to forcefully break the formation? For a man, she didn't even want her own life? Chapter 26:33. Your Majesty. Wait for me. Miao Rongrong spat out a sentence with a weak breath and sped up the squirming speed of her body. Just a little more. She was about to make the Overlord fall in love with her. He was doted on by the Dizun. She was still the high and mighty Lady Miao, the future Holy Virgin of the Miao tribe. She looked at the handsome man in front of her. Miao Rongrong trembled as she stretched out that one hand which was still intact, and grabbed onto Xian's robes. Bang! An irresistible burst of profound energy charged towards Miao Rongrong's outstretched hand. The dark force was like a sharp blade. Quickly and coldly, Miao Rongrong's hand was cut off. Get your filthy hands off my man. A cold and murderous voice drifted into the ears of the father and daughter of the Miao family bit by bit. Yiqing Luo's eyes were bloodshot. His eyes were sharp and his killing intent was obvious. He was in the middle of thousands of goo worms. The flames on her body forced those goo insects to not dare to come close to her. Miao Rongrong, quick, quick. She couldn't get out. There's no way she can escape from the goo array. Miao Yixiong was so shocked by Yiqing Luo's look that he broke out in cold sweat. He only felt that the look in the girl's eyes. There was not the slightest bit of warmth. It was like looking at a dead person. Fear spread in his heart. He subconsciously urged Miao Rongrong. Xian was about to open his eyes. No matter what, Miao Rongrong was definitely in an advantageous position. It didn't matter even if he lost his hands. The venerable emperor who was poisoned by the love goo. Miao Rongrong was extremely ugly. Xian would love her as much as his own life. Miao Rongrong also knew this. Even if her mind was not clear, she knew that she must become Xian's woman. One hand was bitten off. One of his hands was cut off by Qi. She didn't seem to feel any pain. He could not feel the spread of blood. Using her own body, she arched towards the direction of Xian. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned even redder. Bit by bit, an extremely cold killing intent and madness lingered on it. The mystic rank was still increasing. It was about to burst the goo worms that were surrounding him into a mountain. Luo girl, wake up. You can't do this. Quickly put the heart-calming bead back into the profound heart jade. If this goes on, not only will you not be able to break the goo formation, your meridians might even be severed. Old man Song's voice kept on dissuading Yiqing Luo in her mind. It was so anxious that it incessantly used the azure dew bracelet to burn Yiqing Luo's wrist. I'm fine. Before Xian opens his eyes, I won't let anything happen to me. Yiqing Luo's consciousness was still clear. Her eyes were filled with love as she gazed deeply at Xian's peerless and elegant face. His breathing gradually calmed down. Bang! There was a loud crash. The tightly shut door of the bedroom collapsed with a loud crash. Dust and gravel flew all over the ground. A clear voice rang from the door. Qing Luo, are you all right? Sorry I'm late. This voice had an instant of grooming. Yiqing Luo's mind was suddenly in a daze. His crimson eyes slowly moved to the door. However, she did not have time to see the person standing at the door. A gigantic goo worm fell from the sky and landed beside her. This goo worm was roughly the size of the woman's 2 palms put together. Compared to the thousands of different goo worms around, it was indeed considered to be gigantic. The goo worm was entirely black. Chapter 2634. The flames on Yiqing Luo's body at this moment inexplicably stopped. She lowered her eyes and looked at the gigantic goo worm by her feet. Intuition told her that this goo worm would not hurt her. Qing Luo, the king of venomous worms, is here. You don't need to care about the other goo worms. Go to the overlord quickly. That clear voice rang once again, urging Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo noticed. The moment that gigantic goo worm landed by her feet, the surrounding wriggling goo worms all started to crawl upwards as though they were escaping. The green viscous liquid kept dripping as the densely packed goo worms crawled quickly. Yiqing Luo didn't think any further. She lifted her leg and charged towards Zhou Xian. Those goo worms which were originally trapped around her. When they sensed her approaching, they started to move away. The densely packed goo worms, all sorts of colors and shapes, were separated into 2 sides. This was really a visual impact. But Yiqing Luo didn't have the mood to bother about this visual impact. All her thoughts were placed on Zhou Xian. So much so that when Miao Yixiong saw Yiqing Luo rushing out of the array and saw the person standing at the door, his face was filled with rage and he bellowed. Yiqing Luo didn't even bother about it. Miao Yi, you vile spawn. You stole the Miao family's ancient goo worm and now you dare to help an outsider to deal with your biological father. Miao Yixiong was so angry that his intestines were churning. He couldn't believe it. When the plan was about to succeed, it was ruined by Miao Yi, the vile spawn whom he had never cared about. Xian. Yiqing Luo rushed to Zhou Xian's side and held his hand. The man's fingers were icy cold like ice. Her heart ached as she wrapped her hands around his hand. A pair of charming eyes stared intently at Zhou Xian's face. Very quickly, Zhou Xian's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Yiqing Luo's eyes lit up as she delightedly leaned forward. Whine. The overlord is mine. A hoarse roar came from Miao Rongrong's mouth. When he saw Yiqing Luo's expression change, Miao Rongrong knew. Zhou Xian must be waking up. The overlord could only be hers. She was the overlord's most beloved woman. It couldn't be anyone else. It couldn't be anyone else. Miao Rongrong mustered up all her strength and, not knowing where she got the energy from, she actually propped up her own body, which was covered in blood, as she fiercely charged towards Yiqing Luo, who was lying beside Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian's eyes moved again. At the same time, Miao Rongrong's head knocked heavily onto Yiqing Luo's waist. Yiqing Luo was half kneeling by Zhou Xian's side with her back straight and didn't notice Miao Rongrong's madness. The impact caused her body to sway slightly. Her entire body fell towards the other side of Zhou Xian. Seizing this opportunity, Miao Rongrong swiftly moved her face close to Zhou Xian. But, just as Yiqing Luo's body was about to fall onto the ground beside Zhou Xian, his waist suddenly tightened. The man's broad palm held her waist tightly. Yiqing Luo's body fell onto the man's chest. He felt a warm sensation on his lips. She was stunned, and then she realized. This fall of his was especially melodramatic. He kissed Zhou Xian's lips. What was that force on his waist just now? That familiar temperature, that familiar force. But wasn't Xian unconscious? He who was poisoned by the love goo, how could he make such an action? Just as Yiqing Luo's thoughts were in a mess. Chapter 26:35. His eyes were as deep as the sea. He stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Loving and gentle, affectionate and gentle. Even Yiqing Luo, when she met that pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes, she lost her soul for a moment. This man was really evildoer. Perfectly grown with peerless elegance. His imposing manner was so seductive. Wait a minute. Yiqing Luo suddenly thought of something as she pulled her thoughts away from the beauty. Her hands supported his chest as she sat up straight, her eyes staring at his face in a daze. Xian. You didn't. This Zhou Xian. No matter if it was his gaze or expression, it was no different from usual. Earlier when she fell from his body, it was Zhou Xian who pulled her back into his arms. If it wasn't for Zhou Xian's large palm supporting her waist, probably the person Zhou Xian saw when he opened his eyes would be Miao Rongrong. But if Zhou Xian wasn't affected by the love worm, even if the first person he saw when he opened his eyes was Miao Rongrong, then it didn't matter anymore. The man looked at her, his gaze was still that gentle, that perfect face which made one suffocated, outlined a warm smile. His large palm was still that possessive, hugging her waist tightly. A strong and overbearing aura. An irresistible charm. It was still so familiar. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief, as a comfortable smile surfaced on her face, radiant and beautiful. Miao Rongrong, who was lying on the side, was still a step too late as she fell stiffly to the side. All her energy was used earlier when she bumped into Yiqing Luo. At this moment, Miao Rongrong didn't even have the energy to stand up. She was the closest. Naturally, after Zhou Xian opened his eyes, the atmosphere between the two of them was all taken in. Her eyes widened in astonishment. Why, the love worm didn't work? How could the overlord not be affected by the love worm? Wasn't his consciousness swallowed by the love worm, and only listened to the first person he saw? But Zhou Xian was obviously no different from before. Could it be that the overlord was already so powerful that he could even decode their Miaogu family's taboo? Miao Yixiong also noticed this, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. Unable to believe that even after he had infiltrated his ancestor's tomb and dug out the forbidden love goo from his ancestor, he still had no way to control Zhou Xian. How powerful was the Dizun? No. Impossible. How could it be useless? Miao Rongrong was already mentally unstable. At this moment she was stimulated by the two of them looking at each other affectionately. She immediately exploded and shook her head desperately. He was also poisoned by my heart separation goo. How could he cure it? No, he won't love that bitchy Luo anymore, he won't. Centrifugal goo? Miao Yixiong heard these three words and looked at Miao Rongrong with his bloodied face. You used the centrifugal goo on Lord Dizun? He couldn't possibly still love Yi Luo. He wouldn't. He should have killed Yi Luo. He should have killed Yi Luo. Miao Rongrong kept repeating this sentence as if she was possessed. Obviously he was greatly agitated. Miao Yixiong didn't need Miao Rongrong's answer. Miao Rongrong's current appearance represented her answer. Chapter 26:36. Centrifugal goo? When Miao Yi heard the name of this goo poison, her delicate face immediately paled. You two are simply infuriating. As the Miao tribe leader, as the future holy maiden of the Miao tribe, you actually disobeyed the advice of your ancestors and used this kind of forbidden goo art. Evil girl, shut up. Miao Yixiong ruthlessly glared at Miao Yi. You vile spawn, if not for you, how could my Miao Gu clan have fallen to such a state? Miao Yi's face paled. Her slender fingers clenched one by one. Her lips trembled with anger. She should have lost all hope for this so-called father a long time ago. She had long since given up hoping that this so-called father would have even the slightest bit of affection for her. In the eyes of Miao Yixiong and everyone in the Miao tribe, Miao Yi was an ominous person. But who knew? She was the direct descendant of the Miao tribe leader. She was the one who was truly suitable to be the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. The honor that Miao Rongrong received in the Miao tribe, It should have belonged to her. But, because of her extravagant desire for fatherly love, an extravagant desire for kinship, he was willing to give everything to Miao Rongrong. All she wanted was a little bit of love from Miao Yixiong. However, her compromise, her hope, in the end, it became the weapon that killed his mother. Her mother had died at the hands of Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong because of her extravagant hopes of kinship. From that moment on, Miao Yi finally understood. No matter what she did, how she did it, those who did not love her would not love her in the end. Miao Yixiong would never treat her as his daughter. Even if, give up everything. Her mother had sacrificed her life for her stupidity. A clear and melodious voice interrupted Miao Yi's thoughts. Her slightly reddened eyes blinked. A crystal-clear tear rolled down from the corner of his eye. She raised her head and forced her tears back. Following that, she turned her head back and looked at that young lady whom she was willing to rely on. Qing Luo, the overlord. Is he all right? Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian had both stood up. The young girl's petite body nestled in the man's arms. The man's large palm did not move away from the girl's waist in the slightest. He maintained a sidelong glance. His shimmering peach blossom eyes stared deeply at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Yiqing Luo's body was slightly messy. Her beautiful face had also turned a little pale. Earlier, when Yiqing Luo forcibly activated the divine phoenix profound heart jade's energy, although it was stopped due to Miao Yi's arrival, but it still caused huge damage to Yiqing Luo's body. He's fine. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly as she replied calmly. However, out of the corner of her eye, she subconsciously glanced at the hand on her waist. Her small hand pressed down on the back of the hand that was on her waist. The man lowered his eyes and smiled even more gently. It was as if he wanted to drown her in the warm spring water. Yiqing Luo's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. She looked away and forced herself to calm down. She looked at Miao Rongrong, who had fallen to the side. What's the matter with the poisonous centrifugal spell? The effect of the poisonous centrifugal spell is the opposite of the love centrifugal spell. The love centrifugal spell makes the host develop a sense of attachment towards the first person they meet. The poisonous centrifugal spell makes the host forget the person whom the poisonous centrifugal spell had specified and to that person develop killing intent. Miao Yi explained and immediately looked at Zhou Xian. The overlord is a legend like the Nirvana realm god. He doesn't seem to be affected by the poisonous centrifugal spell, so you don't have to worry. She didn't notice. After she finished explaining about the poisonous centrifugal spell. Chapter 2637. Let's leave this place first. The barrier is about to break, and the people from the Qingyue sect will be able to sense what's happening here, said Miao Yi. Before I leave, I have to give this father and daughter a big gift. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned cold as she subconsciously increased the strength of the hand that was pressing on the back of Zhou Xian's hand. She spoke as she spoke. His tone was filled with killing intent. A pair of long and narrow eyes glowed with a cold light. Miao Yi was shocked by Yiqing Luo's reaction. She was slightly stunned, but very quickly she understood the reason why Yiqing Luo was so angry. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong wanted to use the love goo to force Lord Dizun to fall in love with Miao Rongrong. He even poisoned Lord Dizun with the centrifugal goo that would make Lord Dizun lose his mind. This was totally stepping on Qing Luo's bottom line. Qing Luo. The Miao tribe in the northern continent has a pivotal position. If the Miao tribe's chief and eldest young miss were to die in the Qingyue sect, it would cause a war between the Miao tribe and the Qingyue sect. Miao Yi reminded as she looked at the murderous young lady. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled up in an evil manner. Don't worry, I won't take their lives after all. The one who hates them more is you. Miao Yi was stunned. Her lips moved. When did you find out? After returning from the Bu family village, I roughly guessed it. Yiqing Luo didn't keep him guessing. Plus, Xian Gui's attitude towards you has confirmed my guess. Xian Gui was clearly a member of the Miao Gu aristocrat clan. However, Xian Gui's status was not high. It was also because of this that he was humiliated by Miao Rongrong in the Peach Blossom restaurant. Miao Yi lowered her eyes, a layer of guilt appearing on her pretty face. Sorry, I knew you needed Gu masters, but I hid it from you. Everyone has secrets that they don't want others to know. It's okay. Yiqing Luo's voice was very indifferent. Miao Rongrong is already crippled. Comparing your venomous insect skills with hers, who's better? Miao Yi knew the meaning behind her question. Miao Yi looked at Yiqing Luo and nodded her head vigorously. I'm stronger than her. Then if you become the Miao tribe leader and sacred maiden, will that make the Miao tribe become better? Yiqing Luo nodded her head in satisfaction, as her pair of charming eyes were tainted with a sliver of radiance. Miao Yi had apparently not expected Yiqing Luo to use such a normal tone to say such shocking words. But when he heard Yiqing Luo's last word, Miao Yi's beautiful eyes were gradually filled with a resolute light. I will do better than them. Yiqing Luo smiled as she patted her shoulder lightly. Following that, he held Damo Xian's hand as they walked towards Miao Yixiong. That's right, that Gu King of yours, can I borrow it for a while? Yiqing Luo pointed at the ancient Gu worm which was still in the Gu array, forcing those Gu worms to jump up and down. Miao Yi looked at the Gu King hesitantly. It's not easy to control. I'm afraid it will hurt you. It has already recognized you as its master. It will understand your feelings. When Yiqing Luo finished her sentence, she suddenly had a feeling, as if the venomous Worm King was looking in her direction. He deserved to be the ancient Gu King. He could also understand human language. In this case, it would be more convenient to borrow the Gu King's power. You and Xian Gui leave first. I will leave this place before the enchantment disappears. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a bloodthirsty smile. Chapter 26:38. Miao Yi bent down and touched the hard carapace on the venomous Worm King's body and whispered, I'll pick you up later. She turned around and left the bedroom. Yiqing Luo's gaze fell onto Miao Yixiong. She didn't notice that Chi-Chi which had been pestering Miao Yixiong had unknowingly returned to the size of a cat. Its tail was wagging furiously. Its tiger eyes lit up as it wagged its tail and followed behind Miao Yi. Outside the door, a young man's panicked voice could be heard. Where did this cat come from? Don't pounce on me. The door to the bedroom was once again tightly shut. The light in the bedroom dimmed a little. Miao Yixiong's back was pressed against the wall, all his muscles tensed up. Yi Luo, this is Qingyue sect. Just like what Miao Yi said. This was Qingyue sect. His Miao tribe leader had met with an accident in Qingyue sect. Qingyue sect had to bear all the responsibility. Didn't Yi Luo have an affair with Qingyue sect? She would definitely not let Qingyue sect fall into such a predicament. Hee hee. A clear and melodious laughter rang out. But the coldness in it made Miao Yixiong's heart skip a beat. Why are you so nervous, Miao Yixiong? I said. I won't kill you. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly. The coldness between her brows was obvious. Even that pair of blood-red eyes seemed to be covered with a black fog like thick ink. He was smiling. However, the formless pressure in the air seemed to have condensed the surrounding air. Miao Yixiong was horrified. His face was badly mutilated by Chi-Chi's claws, twitching and turning over the flesh. The blood mixed with the dust on the ground was extremely disgusting. However, this disgusting scene didn't change the young lady's expression. She just looked at him with a faint smile. There was no warmth in her gaze. This is a private matter between you, Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong, and me. How would I involve Qingyue sect? Her sweet voice sounded like a summon from hell. At this moment, Miao Yixiong felt the current Yi Luo looked even more intimidating than Damo Xian beside her. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo looked sideways at Damo Xian. As soon as she looked up, she met the man's gentle gaze. Her expression was soft. She gently pressed the hands around her waist. You stand here and wait for me. The hand on her waist tightened its grip. The man shook his head and stared at her. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she threw her petite body into Damo Xian's arms. The man's arms immediately wrapped around her body. Yiqing Luo raised her arms and circled them around Damo Xian's neck. She tiptoed slightly and kissed him on his thin lips. As if he was coaxing a child, he used a voice that only the two of them could hear and said gently, Ah Xian, listen to me. You stay here and watch me. I won't leave. The hand on her waist tightened. He seemed to be a little unhappy. But because Yiqing Luo's kiss on his lips was soft and fragrant. In the end, he released his hands and stood aside. I'll wait for you. Yiqing Luo revealed a smile as her eyes were filled with warmth. This scene fell into Miao Yixiong's eyes and he felt that something wasn't right. Love worm really had no effect on Damo Xian? But why did he feel that? Dmo Xian's imposing manner wasn't as terrifying as before he fainted? Not right. If Dmo Xian was really affected by the love worm, then he would definitely be affected by Miao Rongrong, who had implanted the centrifugal worm into Dmo Xian. Looking at the atmosphere between Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo. Chapter 2639. The Ancestors' Forbidden Technique. It had no effect on Dmo Xian. Miao Yixiong's eyes changed as it shone with an unknown glint. He looked at the young lady who was walking towards him step by step, and looked at Dmo Xian who was standing by the side. His gaze was fixed on the young lady. He took a deep breath. Dmo Xian had no intention to make a move. To him this was a chance to live. As long as he could restrain Yi Luo, he would have the chance to leave this place. Leader Miao, since you like goo worms so much, why not let these goo worms accompany you to play? Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly, but her voice was indifferent while her gaze was icy cold. Miao Yixiong was still puzzled about the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words. He saw Yiqing Luo lowered her head and took a look at that huge goo worm. Goo King, I'll have to trouble you. The eerie green light on the carapace of the goo worm that was about the size of 2 palms flickered. In the goo array, those goo worms which were escaping immediately stopped. Following that, they swarmed towards Miao Yixiong's direction. The speed of the goo worms was very slow. Tens of thousands of them formed a black hurricane as it charged towards Miao Yixiong. Miao Yixiong stared at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. His reaction was swift as he tried to control these goo worms. But at the next moment, those goo worms completely swallowed him up. Miao Yixiong's entire body was covered with scratches from Qi. Many parts of his body were badly mutilated and his white bones could be seen. This made it easier for these goo worms to burrow into Miao Yixiong's body. Miao Yixiong didn't even have the energy to resist. He was drowned by thousands of goo worms. Miao Yixiong's body was covered by a dense assortment of goo worms. The scene was extremely disgusting and horrifying. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly, but there wasn't a single ripple in her eyes. Her lips curled up slightly as she gave an evil smile. Leader Miao, don't struggle and don't cry out. I said I won't take your life and I will absolutely not let you die. Her voice was light and ethereal, making one feel an inexplicable chill. Miao Rongrong, who was sprawled on the ground, was so shocked that she wanted to escape. But she couldn't control that broken body at all. Bam! Before he could stand up, he fell heavily to the ground. The noise created by Miao Rongrong also made Yiqing Luo shift her gaze onto her. Miao Rongrong shuddered. Her crazed eyes were filled with fear towards Yiqing Luo. This was a fear that came from the bottom of his heart. He did not hide it at all. Don't be anxious, it's your turn now. Yiqing Luo smiled as she took slow steps towards Miao Rongrong. Looking at Miao Rongrong's ferocious and frightened expression, she laughed again. Scared? Why weren't you afraid when you poisoned Xian? I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Forgive me, please forgive me. Forgive me. Miao Rongrong was so scared that she no longer had the slightest bit of infatuation towards Dmo Xian. Miao Rongrong's only thought now was to survive. Although Yiqing Luo had said that she would spare her and Miao Yixiong's lives. But looking at Miao Yixiong, who was covered by so many goo worms, he could not help but sigh. She was a goo master, how could she not understand? How could Miao Yixiong, who had been swallowed by a parasite, still be alive? Even if he was alive, that was just a parasite's puppet. It's not impossible to let you go after all. You who have lost both your hands can't affect me at all. Yiqing Luo bent down slightly as she looked at Miao Rongrong with a smile. Tell me the cure for the love parasite and centrifugal parasite. Chapter 2640. You don't know. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed dangerously. Miao Rongrong trembled in fear and shook her head desperately. I really don't know. That's the ancestors' forbidden spell. Ordinary goo masters like us have no way of knowing the solution to forbidden goo arts. I only took the heart separation goo when father wasn't paying attention. But I really don't know how to cure the poison. She cried and kept moving backwards. Dragging the blood all over the ground, Zhou Xian looked extremely filthy. There was not a single trace of the domineering aura he had before. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she fixed her gaze on Miao Rongrong for some time. He could more or less confirm that Miao Rongrong did not know the solution to the love goo and centrifugal goo. Her gaze landed on Miao Yixiong, who was struggling under the cover of the goo worms. Plus, I'm afraid. Miao Yixiong doesn't know how to cure the forbidden goo. Ever since the ancestors of the Miao tribe sealed the black tortoise, the ancestors of the Miao tribe brought all the forbidden goo techniques into the tomb. Old man Song's voice resounded in his mind. My guess is that Miao Yixiong went directly to the Miao tribe's tomb and took away the love goo and the separation goo from the Miao tribe's ancestor's coffin. As for the cure, unless the Miao tribe's ancestor revives, it's impossible that the Miao ancestors didn't leave behind the cure. Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened. Since there's no way to dig it out from this father and daughter pair, I'll search the entire Miao tribe. These two types of goo poison were obviously of the opposite attribute. No matter how strong Zhou Xian was, no matter how strong his body was, it was invaded by these two goo at the same time. To some extent it would still affect his body. She must think of a way to remove the two types of venom in Zhou Xian's body. Yiqing Luo was deep in thought as she conversed with old man Song. Suddenly he sensed a sharp gust of wind coming at him. Yiqing Luo swiftly retreated and flipped her palm. Profound qi burst forth and turned into a sharp blade. A blood-curdling scream was heard, followed by the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Miao Rongrong's body rolled several times on the ground. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Miao Rongrong bumped into the corner of the wall and coughed non-stop. Her face was covered in blood, and her expression could no longer be seen clearly. He could only vaguely see her twisted and hideous facial features. If you don't let me go, I'll kill you. She howled hoarsely as her pair of malevolent eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. As though she knew that no matter what, Yiqing Luo would not let her off, so she might as well go all out. However, Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. Just based on your current look and you want to kill me? Miao Rongrong had lost both her hands. Even his most proficient goo technique could not be used on her. Miao Rongrong still wanted to kill her? I can even perish together with you. Perish together with you. Miao Rongrong at this moment seemed to have returned back to her previous state, when she was infatuated with Zhou Xian, and her abnormal mental state. Her lips moved quickly. He muttered the words perish together. He looked like he was possessed. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she looked at Miao Rongrong, who was trying her best to shift her back, leaning against the wall, smiling sinisterly in an attempt to stand up, but repeatedly falling onto the ground. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. Her eyes immediately dimmed as her slender brows knitted tightly, as she stared straight into Miao Rongrong's bewitched eyes. Her pupils shook and her feet changed as she speedily moved towards Miao Rongrong's direction. Miao Rongrong was just preparing to operate her profound jade heart, attempting to use it to self-destruct, exploding the entire bedroom. Chapter 2641. Miao Rongrong wanted to avoid it, but Yiqing Luo's hand had already grabbed her long hair, which was soaked in blood. Hiss! Miao Rongrong gasped in pain. Her pupils became clearer because of this burst of pain. Oh, I didn't expect there to be a new discovery. Yiqing Luo sneered as she pulled Miao Rongrong's head towards her. She had no intention of showing mercy to the fairer sex. Let me go. Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that her scalp was about to be pulled off. Yiqing Luo ignored Miao Rongrong's scream. She pulled her head closer to herself. His eyes were fixed on Miao Rongrong's pupils without blinking. The more Miao Rongrong struggled, the tighter her scalp was pulled. In the end, Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that she had no energy to struggle. About the time it took to burn half an incense stick. Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand and quickly poked Miao Rongrong's eyes. Miao Rongrong screamed in shock and quickly closed her eyes. The intense pain that he had imagined did not come. Miao Rongrong's heart was so scared that it almost jumped out from her throat. The young lady's icy cold voice rang in her ears. Open your eyes. Miao Rongrong's eyelashes fluttered and instinctively opened her eyes under Yiqing Luo's coercion. In front of her was the young lady's slender fair fingers. It was sparkling and translucent like jade, and glowing with a moist luster. At this moment, Miao Rongrong's consciousness was unprecedentedly clear. She quickly tried to move backward to avoid the attack. But her hair was tightly held in Yiqing Luo's hand. She wanted to escape. The pulling of her scalp brought about a sharp pain. Miao Rongrong's breathing became hurried as fear magnified in her heart. His pupils also unconsciously widened a little. Suddenly Miao Rongrong felt a stinging pain in her eyes. But Yiqing Luo's fingers did not touch her eyes at all, not allowing Miao Rongrong to think carefully. The pain in her eyes became more and more obvious. It was as though something was swelling in her eyes, as if something was about to explode. "Move again and I will dig out your eyes." A cold voice floated down from above. Miao Rongrong was in so much pain that she was trembling and sweating profusely. "What are you going to do?" Yiqing Luo didn't answer her. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Her fingers were just a little distance away from Miao Rongrong's opened eyes. If her hand trembled for even a moment, it would definitely stab Miao Rongrong in the eye. Very quickly, Yiqing Luo's fingertip, which was placed on Miao Rongrong's eyes, appeared a black line. It was extremely thin. It was like a strand of hair. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't be able to tell. That black thread, after being pinched by Yiqing Luo's fingertips, seemed to have a life of its own as it tried to escape. But Yiqing Luo grabbed it tightly. Back when Miao Rongrong was obsessed with Zhou Xian, Yiqing Luo discovered a faintly discernible black line in Miao Rongrong's eyes. This was the thing that controlled Miao Rongrong. It was the thing that caused Miao Rongrong to repeatedly lose control and become crazy. Yiqing Luo recalled that Miao Yixiong's palms strike on her earlier, which revealed the dark force's presence. This black thread. It was similar to the mysterious Yin energy. But this black thread was obviously much more brilliant than the mysterious Yin energy. At least she could immediately discover the mysterious Yin energy and expel it. And this black thread, if it wasn't for her sharp observation, she wouldn't be able to detect it at all. After grabbing that black thread. Chapter 2642. Yiqing Luo pulled on it. Miao Rongrong's body started to tremble. It was so painful that she couldn't help but draw in a breath of cold air. But the fear towards Yiqing Luo made her not dare to struggle. After a while, that slender black thread was completely pulled out from Miao Rongrong's eyes. Yiqing Luo gestured. It was about half the length of her arm. When the black thread was completely pulled out, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo also confirmed that this black thread really had its own consciousness. Because the moment Yiqing Luo just pulled out the black thread, that slender black thread swiftly wrapped around Yiqing Luo's wrist. Immediately, it headed towards Yiqing Luo's eyes. But before the black thread entered Yiqing Luo's eyes, it was pressed down by Yiqing Luo's fingernails. Tiske. Yiqing Luo let go of Miao Rongrong's hair and with a casual flick, her fingers swiftly wrapped the black thread around her hand. Miao Rongrong fell onto the ground and raised her head. From this angle she could see clearly the black thread in Yiqing Luo's hand. She recalled what Yiqing Luo did to her eyes earlier and her body stiffened as she asked in a trembling voice, What is this thing? Becoming someone else's puppet and you still don't know, to think you're the eldest miss of the Miao tribe." Yiqing Luo snorted coldly as she shot a disdainful glance at her. Miao Rongrong's face turned pale as she leaned against the wall weakly, gasping for air. "This thing, who put it on you? Is Miao Yixiong also controlled by this thing?" As Yiqing Luo was asking, she pretended to use her little finger to smear a layer of something on that black thin thread. Miao Rongrong shrunk back as she lowered her head. "I don't know." "You don't know again?" Yiqing Luo laughed. "If I ask you, you don't know anything, what's the use of keeping you alive?" Miao Rongrong immediately raised her head as she looked at Yiqing Luo in fear. "This thing, I really don't know. My father, he will not be controlled." "You're so certain that your father isn't being controlled, yet you say you don't know the source of this thing?" Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Miao Rongrong realized that her answer had fallen into Yiqing Luo's trap as she clenched her teeth. "I really don't know that person. I've never seen his face before. I can only confirm that he's a man and his age isn't old." "Meant young age?" Yiqing Luo murmured these two clues as she lowered her eyes to look at the struggling black thread. A dim light flashed across his eyes. "The barrier is about to be broken. The people from the Great Joy sect should be here soon." Yiqing Luo glanced at the tightly shut door. "Today it's just a small punishment, another day, we'll continue." The smile on her lips deepened. He gently caressed the profound phoenix ring. Then he sprinkled a handful of powder on Miao Rongrong. The next instant, Yiqing Luo had already moved to the door of the room. Perhaps it was because the speed was too fast. Yiqing Luo's hand, which was pinching the black thread, knocked against the door. She felt pain as soon as she ate. The black thread was like a soft snake as it squeezed into the gap of the door and disappeared. Yiqing Luo wasn't flustered at all as she revealed an unfathomable smile. Following that, she opened the door and walked out. "King of venomous worms, let's go," she called out softly. The gigantic worm, which was originally standing in the array, leaped up and landed on Yiqing Luo's shoulder. If it was an ordinary lady, with such a huge worm crawling on her body, she would definitely scream uncontrollably. But Yiqing Luo expressed that she even dared to use her bare hands to catch venomous snakes and scorpions. Chapter 2643. Miao Rongrong's heart thumped when she saw Yiqing Luo leaving so readily. She didn't believe that Yiqing Luo would be so kind to let her off. Soon Miao Rongrong's guess was confirmed. At the moment when Yiqing Luo closed the bedroom door, Miao Yixiong, who was covered by goo worms, suddenly let out a roar like a wild beast. Miao Rongrong looked over in shock. She saw Miao Yixiong stood up shakily. His body was crawling with goo worms, because the Goo King was no longer controlling him. Those goo worms were disorderly as they scurried around. Miao Yixiong's body was full of flesh and blood. Goo worms were crawling around. It was extremely disgusting and horrifying. The impact of this scene made Miao Rongrong's pupils dilate rapidly. An uncontrollable scream of fear came from her throat. Miao Rongrong tilted her head and vomited uncontrollably. He heard this scream. Miao Yixiong slowly turned his head. His cold eyes stared at Miao Rongrong without blinking. Goo worms crawled all over his body, which was covered in flesh and blood, as he staggered towards Miao Rongrong's direction. Don't come over," Miao Rongrong said in a hoarse and trembling voice. Her body kept moving towards the corner of the wall. The moment she moved, Miao Rongrong discovered the strangeness of her body. Her whole body was so weak that she couldn't even lift a finger. Following that, an indescribable burning sensation surged from the soles of her feet. Just for a moment, Miao Rongrong felt like there were countless ants gnawing on her body. Her whole body felt extremely itchy. It itched so much that she twisted her body unconsciously. It itched so much that she wanted to rub against something unconsciously. It was like an itch from the bones. Her lower abdomen was burning with a ball of fire. Her whole body was itching unbearably. No matter how stupid Miao Rongrong was, she knew her body was not normal. She thought of the thin layer of powder that Yiqing Luo sprinkled on her before she left. Then she saw Miao Yixiong staggering toward her like a wild beast. Miao Rongrong shuddered and suddenly realized Yiqing Luo's plan. No, absolutely not. That mysterious man. Why didn't he come to save her? Why didn't he come? No matter how much Miao Rongrong resisted in her mind, in the end Miao Yixiong walked to her side. No matter how conscious Miao Rongrong was, hoping that the mysterious man would come in time. But the moment Miao Yixiong's hand touched her, the restlessness in her body drove her to take the initiative to approach him. Miao Yixiong's horrifying and disgusting body. Two bodies that reeked of blood touched each other. The goo worms crawled on the two people's bodies. The barrier around the Miao tribe's courtyard was completely broken. And because of Yiqing Luo's intentional actions, they had already sensed the strange profound qi fluctuations over here. Xianxia and the other forces in the Qinghua sect rushed over. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he could clearly hear the panting of a woman. It was accompanied by the sound of heavy breathing. Although there were more than 20 people in the group, none of them were young men or women. But hearing such a voice in front of so many people, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. One of the middle-aged men coughed a few times and said awkwardly, "I didn't expect Miss Miao to be such a woman who doesn't care about trifles. We must have misunderstood something. Let's leave first." The others nodded in agreement. Miao Rongrong was still unmarried. Chapter 2644. However, many people's gazes still landed on the room where the battle was intense. In their minds, Miao Rongrong's beautiful face appeared. Everyone couldn't help but have some kind of thought. But in front of Xianxia, they naturally couldn't show their dirty thoughts. All of them winked and were about to turn around and leave. What's going on? Rongrong wouldn't do such a thing unless that person is... Suddenly, a cry of disbelief was heard. Everyone turned to look. The man who was staring at the bedroom with his eyes wide open in shock was none other than Miao Jingwei. Miao Jingwei was trembling all over. He wasn't afraid but excited. but on his face he still maintained his shocked expression. A woman's voice came from the bedroom. It was extremely familiar. The person in the room was definitely the overlord. Just now, the dark force fluctuation from this courtyard was deliberately attracted by Miao Rongrong, right? It was to tell everyone. She, Miao Rongrong, was the overlord's real woman. It seemed that the plan was a success. He had to cooperate with Miao Rongrong's plan. When everyone knew that the person the overlord doted on from now on was Miao Rongrong, their Miaogu family's status would definitely soar. They might even surpass the Qingyue clan. Second young Master Miao, who are you talking about? Someone asked curiously when he saw Miao Jingwei hesitating. Many people shifted their gazes over at the same time. Miao Jingwei looked at them and shook his head awkwardly. I'm not sure. That person is not someone I can casually talk about. The more Miao Jingwei said so, the more curious the crowd was. To be able to make the arrogant Miss Miao in the territory of the Qingyue clan, who was bedridden with a cold, dare to make such a big scene. Who was that man? Miao Jingwei evaded and said in a low voice, "We'd better leave first. If Miss Yi knows about the situation here, she'll turn the Qingyue clan upside down." It would have been better if he didn't mention the name Miss Yi. Once it was mentioned, the surrounding people immediately burst into an uproar. Miss Yi? That meant the man inside was the overlord. She recalled that a few days ago Miao Rongrong had tried to please Dizun several times, but Dizun and Yi Luo had rejected her mercilessly. Now, the overlord actually slept with Miao Rongrong behind Yi Luo's back? This was too shocking. Are you saying that the person inside is the overlord? Xianxia had been paying attention to the bedroom and frowned. The relationship between Dizun and Yi Luo. He saw it very clearly. How could the overlord be with a woman like Miao Rongrong behind Yi Luo's back? I didn't say anything. Miao Jingwei raised his head abruptly as if he had spilled the beans. His panicked attempt to explain further confirmed what the overlord had said in the bedroom. The way everyone looked at Miao Jingwei and the person in the bedroom immediately changed. The teasing, filthy, and obscene gazes all disappeared at this moment. Xianxia's frown deepened. Could the person inside be His Majesty? As he spoke, he walked towards the bedroom. Chapter 2645. Miao Jingwei's words further confirmed that the person inside was Zhou Xian. The overlord and eldest young Miss Miao had this layer of relationship, which also meant that from now onwards the Miao tribe would have the protection of the overlord. Who would dare to offend the Miaogu family? Immediately, everyone rushed forward to stop Xianxia. Young sect master Yin, second young master Miao is right. We must not disturb them at such a time. If we spoil the mood of the person inside, we will not be able to bear the consequences. Xianxia's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. His gentle eyes were also covered with a layer of ice. His pupils were as dark as ink, extremely gloomy. Second young Master Miao is so sure that the person inside is the overlord. Why do I feel that you are intentionally leading us to think that the person inside is the overlord? After all, none of us can really inquire about the relationship between the overlord and eldest young Miss Miao, isn't it? When the last three words were spat out, under Xianxia's invisible pressure, Miao Jingwei actually felt his legs turning into jelly. His breathing was a little messy. I did not intentionally lead you. The person inside is the overlord. The overlord had long fallen in love with Rongrong at first sight, otherwise Rongrong would not possibly stick her warm face to a cold but in front of so many people. After saying a few words, Miao Jingwei became more and more confident. Even the overlord would not be able to escape the control of the ancestors' forbidden technique. The person inside was undoubtedly the overlord. Xianxia did not believe that the overlord would do such a thing. But Miao Jingwei's confident tone, he did not know how to refute. And Miao Jingwei's certainty and confidence made all the powerhouses believe that Zhou Xian and Miao Rongrong had a close relationship. Everyone's smiles towards Miao Jingwei became even more gentle and amiable. A few of them tugged at Xianxia and advised him softly, "Young sect master, no matter who is inside, we should not disturb them. Let's leave this place first. If the person inside really finds out and spoils the mood, we are all men, we definitely know how it feels, it's not a good feeling." Miao Jingwei's mind rippled when he saw everyone's respectful and fawning actions. He became increasingly pleased with himself. These people were so respectful to Dizun after hearing that Dizun had such a relationship with their Meow Meow's young Mississippi. In the future, when they saw the overlord listening to their Meow clan's young mistress, wouldn't he have to worship them like gods? Young sect master Een, I know you have a good relationship with Miss Yi, but isn't it normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Only our young mistress of the Meow tribe is worthy of such an outstanding man like Dizun. Miao Jingwei smiled proudly. Young sect master Een, your emotions are so unstable. You'd better leave first. Don't disturb the overlord's mood. After all, the overlord is still in Rongrong's bedroom. He won't be coming out anytime soon, he drawled. Everyone nodded in agreement. He pulled Een Yanxiu even harder, afraid that he would disturb the overlord. However, just as the crowd was pushing and yelling, clamoring to leave, a clear and pleasant voice with a hint of laughter rang out leisurely. Are you talking about Xian? Chapter 2646. Everyone felt a chill down their spines as their bodies stiffened. This voice. Wasn't it Yi Luo's voice? Why was Yi Luo here? Could it be that he was here to catch a girl? Thinking of Yi Luo's valiance, everyone's body trembled. No way. She absolutely could not let Yi Luo know that the overlord had already gotten together with Miao Rongrong behind her back. Everyone racked their brains trying to think of a way to deceive this matter. But in the bedroom, that burst of sound, it really made one unable not to pay attention to the commotion over there. All of your backs are facing me, don't tell me you're feeling guilty? Yiqing Luo's voice got nearer. It was clear and melodious like a silver bell, extremely pleasing to the ear. But unfortunately it made everyone's heart surge with a chill. What do you think, what happened to Xian? That voice continued. The crowd trembled even more violently. Strange. They were obviously very clear. The current Yi Luo was already the overlord's old love. It was uncertain whether the overlord still wanted Yi Luo. By right, there was no need for them to fear Yi Luo. But they still couldn't control themselves. Under Yi Luo's imposing manner, Miao Jingwei was feeling complacent when he heard Yi Luo's clear voice. He recalled the humiliation he had suffered in Yi Luo's hands. Immediately, he turned his head around complacently following the voice. He looked at Yiqing Luo. What else could it be? Isn't it because the overlord has taken a liking to Rong? His complacent voice stopped abruptly. His eyes were so shocked that they almost popped out from his eye sockets. He opened his mouth wide as he raised his hand abruptly, rubbing his eyes. He looked over again. His expression was steely green. At this moment, everyone started to turn their heads over. When they saw the young lady behind them clearly, their reactions were almost the same as Miao Jingwei's. Shock, disbelief, astonishment. One by one, floated past everyone's eyes. The next moment, everyone stared fiercely at Miao Jingwei. You. Miao Jingwei was met with everyone's gaze as he retreated a few steps with a frightened look. What about me? Yiqing Luo smiled as her eyes squinted. Miao Jingwei's heel bumped into something and he fell to the ground. He put his hands on the ground and kept crawling backward. Dizun, why is Dizun here? That's right, standing behind them was not only Yiqing Luo, who was dressed in a fiery red robe, but also Zhou Xian, who was dressed in a billowing purple robe. Zhou Xian's hand was tightly wrapped around the young lady's waist. It was a very possessive gesture. A pair of narrow peach blossom eyes stared at Yiqing Luo's side profile without blinking. The two of them just stood in front of them. Everyone could feel an overwhelming pressure pressing down on them. Cold sweat appeared on everyone's foreheads. Dizun was here. Then, who was the person inside the house? Dizun, Lady Yi. When Een Yanxiu saw this, his face was filled with joy as he broke free from the few people surrounding him, as he took quick steps towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she lazily leaned into Zhou Xian's arms, giving a languid smile. Earlier I seem to have heard you talking about something. Miao Rongrong and my Xian? Only eldest young Miss Miao is worthy of my Xian? This sentence was obviously asked in an extremely calm tone. But when it reached everyone's ears, everyone felt a burst of chilliness. Chapter 2647. Everyone shuddered. Miao Jingwei was so frightened that he immediately knelt on the ground. The overlord's words were obviously infuriated. Someone tried to salvage the situation as he said anxiously, That's right, that's right. Putting the Honorable Lord Dizun together with Miao Rongrong, that shameless vixen, is an insult to His Majesty. Overlord, it's all because of this second young Master Miao's fallacious words that we misunderstood. If it wasn't for Miss Yi and the Overlord's arrival, I'm afraid we would have been deceived by the Miao people. Overlord, the Miao people tried their best to make us misunderstand you. You must punish the Miao people severely. The crowd spoke one after another. Earlier they tried to please Miao Jingwei so much. Now how heartless they were. They were wholeheartedly trying to push the Miao people out, so that the Overlord's anger would not fall on them. But no matter how they pleaded or complained, Zhou Xian didn't say a word. He didn't even look at them. His eyes were fixed on Yi Qingluo without blinking. His eyes were warm as though there was only Yi Qingluo in his world. Zhou Xian remained silent. The crowd felt a chill down their spines. All of them were shivering, almost kneeling on the ground to beg for mercy. Yi Qingluo gently held Zhou Xian's palm as she raised her head slightly, revealing a smile towards him. Her eyes were gentle as though she was praising him. Zhou Xian's pair of warm peach blossom eyes instantly revealed a smile. Yi Qingluo squeezed Zhou Xian's palm once again as she turned her head over. The gentleness on her face faded away as her smile was tainted with frost. I wonder what Xian did to make everyone misunderstand? Her words had just ended. Coincidentally, Miao Rongrong's moan was heard from the bedroom. Yi Qingluo's brows rose as her gaze shifted towards the bedroom. Everyone revealed an awkward expression. Yi Qingluo laughed lightly. Second young Master Miao, didn't you say that eldest Miss Miao was infected and bedridden on the verge of death? How could she have such a good nature, to put on such a show? Miao Jingwei knelt on the ground softly, his eyes filled with terror as he looked at Yi Qingluo. Especially after hearing Yi Qingluo's question, his body started to tremble like a sieve. Yi Qingluo continued to smile. Since eldest young Miss Miao is busy, then if eldest young Miss Miao were to find out that everyone is eavesdropping, wouldn't she be ashamed to death? We will leave now. We were too rash. We'll leave now. Everyone couldn't wait to leave. Hearing what Yi Qingluo said, all of them seemed as though they were fleeing as their legs trembled, wanting to leave. Miss Yi, we didn't come here on purpose. Yin Yanxiu's refined and handsome face flushed with a tinge of red. There was an extremely strong fluctuation of profound energy in the Miao tribe's courtyard just now. We were worried that something had happened here, so we specially rushed over. We didn't expect that, he explained. He didn't want Yi Qingluo to misunderstand that he was such a dirty person. As soon as he finished speaking, a pair of cold eyes fell on him. Yin Yanxiu was stunned. He looked into the Overlord's clear eyes. The Dizun's eyes were extremely cold with a hint of hatred. She seemed to be extremely disgusted that he was talking to Yi Qingluo. Xian. Yi Qingluo sensed it as her little hand held his big palm tightly. Her slender brows creased as she raised her eyes to look at Zhou Xian. Don't fool around. Zhou Xian pursed his thin lips as his eyes were fluctuating with emotions. After some time he seemed to be annoyed as he turned his head away. Yin Yanxiu looked at the Overlord in a daze as a sliver of astonishment flashed past his eyes. Why did it feel like? Chapter 2648. Just as Yin Yanxiu was feeling puzzled, Yi Qingluo's clear voice interrupted his thoughts. Young sect master Yin. Yi Qingluo's lips curled slightly towards him. The profound energy fluctuations which you sense should be released by me. Yin Yanxiu was startled. But didn't you just arrive? Hearing these conversations, those who wanted to flee the scene also stopped in their tracks. They sensed the fluctuation of dark force. Was it Miss Yi who released it? Could it be? What conflict did Miss Yi have with young Miss Miao just now? Everyone's gossipy hearts were stirred. Early this morning, second young Master Miao came to our courtyard to cause trouble, begging me to save their young Miss Miao. Xian and I came here. But we fell into Chief Miao's trap. He tried to use goo on me and Xian. In order to avoid Chief Miao's trap, I had no choice but to use my profound strength and leave with Xian. Just now, I saw a group of you rushing over here. I was worried that Chief Miao would place goo worms on you, so I came over to take a look, but to think. As Yi Qingluo said that, she took a glance inside the bedroom. The intense sounds were still going on. Miao Jingwei had knelt in her courtyard this morning. Butler Yin was also present as well as other onlookers. If she brought Zhou Xian along and pretended that she had just appeared, it would be too fake. When they opened the door and saw Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong, he would only think that she was the one who had done it. Half-truths and half-lies came out of Yiqing Luo's mouth again. Especially when the overlord was by the side. Everyone decisively chose to believe him. I was wondering why second young Master Miao was so sure that the person who was having sex with Miss Miao was the overlord. You are trying to set the overlord up. No wonder he's been luring us. The Miao tribe leader wants to poison the overlord. Trying to use goo on us? They want to turn us into their Miao tribe's puppets. Miao Jingwei found it hard to breathe under the pressure of countless comments. In the face of the crowd's accusations and hateful gazes, none of them could hold back. Some kind of yellow liquid spilled out from where he was sitting. The fishy smell made people feel disgusted. This is a trap set by the Miao tribe. Let's go. Let's barge in now and see what else they want to say. With that, a large group of people rushed into Miao Rongrong's bedroom. Among them, there were those who wanted to curry favor with the Dizun and distance themselves from the Miao tribe. He was also angry because he was used by the Miao tribe and almost offended the Dizun. Seeing that the crowd was getting out of control, Yin Yanxiu immediately stepped forward to stop them. Everyone, let's wait for young Mistress Miao to come and ask her questions when it's convenient. If we barge in now, it would be our fault. However, just as he reached the bedroom door, Yin Yanxiu's expression changed. That's not right. The smell of blood, there is a very strong smell of blood inside. The expressions of the indignant crowd froze. Yes, there was a strong smell of blood coming from the closed bedroom. However, Miao Rongrong and the man's voices continued. Under such a heavy stench of blood, he could still continue. Wait, don't you feel that something is wrong? The more they thought about it, the stranger they felt. We're outside and we're making so much noise. No matter how good the soundproofing is, they must have heard our voices. How could they continue? Could something have happened to him? Everyone looked at each other. Chapter 2649. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she pondered for a moment. Something is indeed not right, but it's not convenient for us to go in, so it's better to let second young Master Miao go in first to take a look. Miao Jingwei, who was called out, suddenly raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo in shock. What are you looking at? Didn't you hear what Miss Yi said? Why don't you go in and take a look? A man kicked Miao Jingwei, lifted his collar and pushed him to the door of the bedroom. Under the pressure, Miao Jingwei could only brace himself and push the door open. The strong smell of blood assailed their nostrils. Miao Rongrong's cries, which sounded like she was going to die in the next moment, became clearer and clearer. Miao Jingwei's hands trembled. Pushed by the people behind him, he walked in with trembling legs. The door was pushed open. The messy and bloody scene in the house was reflected in everyone's eyes. Not a single part of the bedroom was intact. It was as if they had just gone through an extremely intense battle. This house had not collapsed yet. It was really sturdy. Miao Jingwei moved closer with the speed of a tortoise. He looked in the direction of the voice. No matter how much mental preparation he had. At this moment she couldn't help but scream. Almost subconsciously, Miao Jingwei turned around and was about to run. However, he staggered and tripped on the ground, his body falling heavily on the ground. His face bumped into something. The stench and nauseating stickiness made his face scrunch up. Miao Jingwei stretched out his hand, trembling as he tried to pry it away. However, what he held in his hand was a severed limb. Blood continued to flow out of the wound. Miao Jingwei was so frightened that he screamed and threw away the severed limb in his hand. When everyone saw Miao Jingwei's reaction, they couldn't hold back their curiosity and walked in. When the gaze looked in that direction, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. There were also some people who couldn't take it. They leaned against the wall and vomited. The scene in the room was truly unbearable to look at. Miao Rongrong was pressed to the ground. Her usually extremely beautiful face had long been deformed and was stained with thick blood. Her naked body was covered with scars and blood. One of his arms was severed from the shoulder. One of his arms was severed at the wrist. And the man on top of her was doing the most primitive of actions. His entire body was covered with densely packed bugs. Those bugs were still crawling in and out of their wounds. It was really disgusting. The bedroom was instantly filled with more than 20 people. His surprised voice finally attracted the attention of the two people. The man stopped moving and turned his head bit by bit. Everyone saw the face that was covered by densely packed insects. as well as the faintly visible white bones. Goosebumps broke out all over his body. The people present were all profound practitioners who had seen the world and had experienced slaughter. But this scene really challenged the bottom line of their tolerance. Just when everyone's stomachs were churning and they were trying to stabilize their image, Miao Jingwei was like a madman, desperately holding his head and screaming, "Impossible! How could the clan leader be devoured by the Gu formation? This is absolutely impossible." He raised his voice. Yiqing Luo expressed that she couldn't help but give Miao Jingwei a thumbs up. As expected of a pig-like teammate, she was still worried about what excuse to use to divert everyone's thoughts to the injuries of the Gu worms. Miao Jingwei had already given her a perfect excuse. This sentence was said by Miao Jingwei. Chapter 2650. As expected, when Miao Jingwei's words fell into everyone's ears, everyone immediately turned around and ran for the door. Was that a Gu worm? That was the Miao tribe's Gu worm? Although they did not know Gu. But it was also very clear. Once they were infected by a parasite, they would wish for death. Who would have thought that the Miao tribe's leader would be devoured by the Gu worm? So it's the poison's backlash. Yiqing Luo took over the conversation and entered the bedroom with Zhou Xian. After taking a clear look at the environment in the room, her expression changed slightly. "Miss Yi, no one is controlling this Gu insect. You and the Overlord shouldn't get too close to each other. No one knows what will happen if the Gu insect gets close to you." Someone saw Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian walking into the house and immediately opened his mouth to dissuade them. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes and saw Miao Yixiong grabbing a rag by the side and wrapping it around his waist. He didn't care that Miao Rongrong was also naked. Miao Rongrong woke up, and when she saw what was happening, she hugged herself tightly. Harming others will harm themselves in the end. Never thought that the venomous worms that you used to deal with me and Xian would make you suffer the consequences of your own actions. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yixiong indifferently. The flesh on Miao Yixiong's face rolled and his voice was extremely hoarse. "Bitch, Miao Yixiong, Xian and I will remember everything you and Miao Rongrong have done today." Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as her brows revealed a sinister look. "So, as the price, Miao tribe leader and Miao tribe sacred maiden's position, I'll accept it." The flesh and blood on Miao Yixiong's face rolled even more violently. He clenched his teeth savagely as he pounced towards Yiqing Luo. "Slut! How dare you? How dare you?" Before Miao Yixiong could pounce forward, a torrential, terrifying, profound energy laid horizontally in front of Yiqing Luo. Bang! Accompanied by this loud noise, Miao Yixiong was sent flying backward. He slammed into the wall beside him. Rumble! This collision. The bedroom, which was already on the verge of collapse, suddenly collapsed. Countless rocks smashed onto Miao Yixiong. That palm strike almost took half of Miao Yixiong's life. Then when the house collapsed, he was smashed all over. He immediately vomited blood and fainted. Everyone looked at Yiqing Luo in shock. Zhou Xian's tall figure blocked in front of Yiqing Luo. His black hair danced in the strong wind. His purple robe fluttered in the wind. Miao Yixiong fainted. Zhou Xian then slowly turned around, his long arm once again hugged Yiqing Luo's slender waist tightly. His peach blossom eyes were filled with concern. "He didn't hurt you, did he?" Yiqing Luo's arms circled around his waist as she smiled and shook her head. "No, Xian protected me very well." Zhou Xian's arms tightened. Soon Yiqinghao also hurried over. When he heard everyone's explanations, his face immediately darkened. "Drag him to the Qinyu sect's dungeon. How dare you act so openly in my Qinyu sect?" Yiqinghao was infuriated. The people of the Miao tribe are really capable. This sect master is not done with the Miao tribe. Poison Dizun? Trying to push Miao Rongrong to the Overlord? If it wasn't for Yi Luo's quick-wittedness, the Overlord was really poisoned by the worm. The one who had to bear the Overlord's wrath was the Qinyu sect. How could Yiqinghao not be angry? How could he not be annoyed? When the guards who followed behind saw Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong covered in worms, they didn't dare to lift them up. Chapter 2651. The guards were stunned as they turned to look at Yiqing Luo. Yiqinghao was also slightly stunned. "Miss Yi has some understanding towards Gu worms? Miao tribe's future sacred maiden told me." Yiqing Luo smiled mysteriously. Future sacred maiden? Everyone instinctively looked towards Miao Rongrong. On seeing Miao Rongrong, who was covered in blood, they retracted their gazes. The current Miao Rongrong had lost both her hands and her reputation was ruined. There was no way she could take part in the sacred maiden selection. Furthermore, Miao Yixiong wanted to use gu worms to control the overlord. The Miao Gu family was a huge clan which had existed for close to 1,000 years. Shouldn't it be annihilated? Missy is planning to change the dynasty? One of the slightly older men asked carefully. Yiqing Luo smiled as her eyes squinted. By then everyone will know. Saying that, she didn't continue to stay as she pulled Zhou Xian and left this courtyard. When they left, there were still people rushing towards the courtyard one after another. Probably not too long later, the entire North Continent or even Nirvana realm would all know about the Miao father and daughter duo's deeds. After leaving the courtyard, Yiqing Luo brought Zhou Xian and speedily turned to a corner. She turned sideways as she looked at the people who were heading towards the courtyard, as her lips curled into a faint cold arc. She didn't intend to let the Miao father and daughter duo die just like that. Not to let them see it with their own eyes. Everything they had spent so much effort for had become the possession of Miao Yi, whom they had always despised and despised. How could they be worthy of their unscrupulous methods? Now, she had more important things to confirm. Earlier, that black thread which was pulled out from Miao Rongrong's eyes. She specially smeared soul-chasing powder on it. With this soul-chasing powder, she could easily follow that black thread and find the person who controlled Miao Rongrong. Perhaps she could also find out who the mysterious person who had been in contact with Miao Rongrong was. But if she really met that mysterious person, could the current Xian resist against him? Lil Luo, seeing Yiqing Luo looking at him, Zhou Xian's handsome face, which was like a god, revealed a smile. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips as she raised her hands and cupped his face. She gazed deeply into his eyes. Warmth and joy rippled in Zhou Xian's eyes. The only thing that was missing was his devilish charm. Yes, the current Zhou Xian was no longer the Zhou Xian from before. Ever since Zhou Xian had helped her block the love gu and the heart separation gu, when she opened her eyes she sensed that something was wrong with Zhou Xian. If it was any other time, when Zhou Xian opened his eyes he saw that she was injured by Miao Yixiong. He would definitely pay attention to her injuries at the first moment. And he was angry because of it. However, Zhou Xian did not even utter a single word. He just looked at her with that kind of gentle and affectionate gaze. Moreover, he had become extremely domineering. He was extremely possessive. He couldn't bear to leave her even for a moment. Zhou Xian was ultimately still affected by the love worm. The first person he saw was her. So I clung to her. The first person he saw was Miao Rongrong. Would he also look at Miao Rongrong in the same way? This thought flashed past her mind. Yiqing Luo's mood instantly wasn't beautiful anymore. She should poison Miao Rongrong a few more times. Let Miao Rongrong suffer and not die. Daring to think of her man. Luckily, the first person Zhou Xian saw was her.